Okay, Jim, you may begin.
I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Access Advisory Committee. Number 2, roll call and introduction of staff and public. So Sarita, can you handle that?
Certainly. Chair James Marston,
Here,
Vice Chair Robert Burnham, Vice Chair Robert Burnham, Bob Burnham,
Here, I'm here. I had to unmute myself.
Skylar Kovich,
Here.
Nick Kuntz,
Here.
Karen Luckett,
Here.
Michael Rassler,
Here.
Suzanne Tejada,
Here.
Council Member Megan Harnan is here. Ashley Shue,
Here.
Leah Monaco is
Here.
here. Thank you. And we have guests, Jesse Wheeler, Sarah Clark, Jessica Grant,
Yep, I'm here.
Jessica Grant. Okay, Angela Oslin,
I'm here.
Laura Inez,
Here.
and Dan Henschke.
Sarita, I'm also present if you didn't hear me on the mic.
Oh, thank you, Jessica. And I believe Dan Henschke is here. Yes, thank you.
all right, thanks. Now I'd like to introduce the committee members. We have 2 new members, so a very short introduction from you, and then very short introduction of the original members, so they'll know who we are. So I'll ask the 2 new members to start. Karen, why don't you give us a brief intro?
My name is Karen Luckett. I'm an occupational therapist. I am also a case manager, certified case manager, and a certified life care planner and a certified disability management specialist. I have 42 years experience in the field of rehabilitation of all types, in hospitals with premature up until nursing home, extended care facilities, hospitals. I worked at UCLA for a year. So right now I'm doing consulting, and I am happy to be part of this committee because I would like to use my skills to help make this city more accessible to the disabled and anybody with any kind of problem whatsoever, be it back, vision, strollers, wheelchairs, whatever. And I have some ideas for the State Street parklets to make them more accessible because of the discrepancy between the sidewalk and the entry to the parklets. So I hope to be a productive and enhancing member of this committee.
Thank you. Skylar?
Hi, I'm Skylar Kovich, and my current professional position is Access Technology Specialist at the Cabrillo Institute. Been working there for about 8 months now. I also have a doctorate in political science from UC Santa Barbara, and I taught at UC Santa Barbara and CSU Channel Islands. I've been totally blind since birth, and I've been in the area since 2009, the first UCSB campus and then Ventura, and then moved to the city of Santa Barbara last year. I live on the Mesa near Shoreline Park, and have an 8-month-old baby, which I don't use a stroller, but I walk with him in a backpack. And so I'm really interested in sidewalk accessibility and also accessibility of the city website. And I was also on the UCSB Advisory Access Committee, so I did get to learn more about accessibility for wheelchairs and people with other disabilities, and happy to keep learning more about city planning and everything else we have here.
Thank you, Skylar. Suzanne, do you want to do a brief intro?
Yes, let me unmute. Hi, my name is Suzanne Tejada. I'm an architect, practicing architect in Santa Barbara. I moved back to Santa Barbara in 2002. I grew up in Goleta, and so this is my home. And I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis back in '89. So it's been a slow progress situation where my disability has become more evident and more part of my life. So so the access has been very dear to me, and it's something that we deal with in the profession as well. And I feel that with my training as an architect, my exposure to design and problem solving, and combined with my personal experiences, could help me become a very good advocate for the built environment and accessibility.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was very good. Michael Rassler?
I'm Michael Rassler. I'm the president and CEO at Hillside, which is a intermediate care facility, an ICF, providing a forever home for 59 adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I've been in the nonprofit world for over 35 years, serving as CEO, executive director for over 25, and just doing whatever I can, not only on behalf of Hillside and our residents, but the broader community in terms of access in all ways, much as Karen had said. Pleasure to be on the committee, and very supportive of the work we've done and have in front of us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Nick, how about you?
Hi, Nick Kuntz. Let's see, lifetime Santa Barbara resident, homeowner, husband, father, foster parent, pet rescue advocate. I have dystrophic dysplasia, which is an autosomal recessive genetic disorder of cartilage and bone development, which results in me having a form of dwarfism. Let's see, I'm kind of trying to step into my mother's large shoes on accessibility advocacy, as she was appointed by then President Reagan to the National Council on Disability, where she spent the better part of a decade in Washington, D.C., writing the legislation that we now know as the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Thank you. Bob Burnham?
Hi. What a pleasure to have a full committee. I joined this committee in 2010, so I guess I'm the senior member. And I just turned 71 a week ago yesterday. So I worked for MTD for 32 years, 25 of those as radio dispatcher. Love that job. Now retired. I'm a music minister at my church. This committee has been dear to my heart for the last 10, 11 years of my life, with all areas of accessibility, not just for blind and visually impaired, but for people in wheelchairs, people with other physical disabilities, hearing, intellectual disabilities, all those whole areas. I'm really interested in universal design. And at Jim's suggestion, I guess he'll introduce himself last, he suggested that I team up with Skylar, my buddy over at Braille Institute, to work on better media accessibility as far as notifications and communications, to get word out for as many blind people as we can reach in Santa Barbara regarding accessibility issues. So that's sort of a pending project. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to have to argue with you, Bob. I actually joined this committee originally in 1997 and have been, and I'm older than you are too. So, okay, this is Jim Marston. I used to run a civil engineering company, and then I lost my vision in 1985. I'm visually impaired, not totally blind. I went to UCSB, got a doctorate in geography and spatial cognition, and designed a lot of accessible items for travel, mostly trying to get people more able to access the built environment. I still do research on that. We're working right now on a program or an app that will let people hold up their phone to a digital touch display and use their finger and touch things, and the app will read what number it is. So if it's a microwave or an oven or anything like that, a vending machine, you can now get feedback, because with the touch screens, there's no tactile information at all for the blind. So that's been exciting. I've been on a committee for a long time, chair for 4 or 5 years. And that's enough about me. And we'll go to public comment. Is there anyone who has a comment in the public on things that are not on the agenda? These are general public comments.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. The next item is committee member reports and staff announcement, followed by public comment.
Well, I guess I'm too blind to see that.
You might have a staff announcement from Ms. Shu.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ashley Shu, for those of you who don't know me. I am currently serving as the interim city engineer, while Brian Demore, who has been the AAC staff liaison and ADA coordinator for some time, he's currently serving as the interim airport director, temporarily, while a full recruitment is taking place for that position. So in the meantime, I've stepped in to be the AAC staff liaison and also the ADA coordinator during that interim period. So wanted to introduce myself. I've worked for the city since September of 2008. I'm a civil engineer and have worked in streets and transportation project design and construction. And as I mentioned, I'm currently serving as the interim city engineer. And we are planning for Brian to return. Of course, we don't know the outcome of the airport director recruitment, but we're all planning for Brian's return. It'll likely be 6 to 9 months is the time period that we're anticipating right now. But I will certainly provide updates at future meetings as that recruitment progresses.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm very happy to have you on board. We've had Ashley give many reports to us over the years. I've been very impressed with her knowledge. And so it's nice to have you there.
Thank you, Jim.
Is Barbara Silver online?
We do have we have 5 members of the public for public comment. So
well, can I butt in? Barbara has a committee report about her work. Can we put that in here, or should we put that under public comments?
Is this regarding the Access Advisory Committee?
No, it's her committee work with the downtown parking.
So that would be under public comment.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. And then I'll ask for Suzanne to tell us anything she can about the State Street progress.
Yes. So as some of you know, I am a member of the State Street Advisory Committee that the City of Santa Barbara has formed to consult with regarding the planning for State Street, and most specifically for the master plan. So there's two situations. There's the current state of State Street and what's going on currently with the parklets, and the current situation. The city has formed a separate committee for the current status of the State Street planning, and the committee that I am on is more about the future master plan, and what the city has done. I mean, as some of you know, that the city council has approved an extension of the current emergency ordinance for providing outdoor dining on State Street, and I think that extension goes until March 2023. They have done some changes to the current emergency ordinance. For example, the fire department is requiring a 20-foot clear fire lane in the center of the street or in the street, which is going to cause some establishments to have to reconfigure their outdoor dining situation. there's a, I forget the time that they have to do that. Also, the fire department is requesting that a lot of these outdoor dining facilities have to be movable so they can be taken down and moved. And I'm not involved. I don't know all the details about the individuals and restaurants and things that what they have to do, but so that's a change. That's pretty much it in terms of I think the city council voted in January 25th to extend that emergency ordinance. And parallel to that, the city has been put out an RFP, an RFQ to the public for people to apply, firms, designers, whatever, to apply to do a master plan for the city of Santa Barbara. And on the 28th, on January 28th, the city had an informational meeting with the applicants, people who are interested in applying. So a question and answer session. There were about 45 firms that RSVP'd to the event and 70 attendees. There was a lot of interest. I don't know currently what the deadline is. I can't remember, so I have to look that up. But I know that that there's going to become there's an interview process, a selection process, and I'm hoping that the State Street Advisory Committee will have some involvement with that. Anyway, so that's pretty much. We have a meeting on Monday. We meet once a month. With the holidays, we kind of we lost 1 month, so it's slowly starting up again. The last time we met, the city presented, for example, closing the 400 block of State Street, which is between Gutierrez and the freeway. No, yeah. And they were, they showed us traffic studies and why that would not be a good idea, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of informational meetings and gathering at this point. So.
Thank you, Suzanne. You mentioned there's a committee for current State Street.
Yes.
What is that?
The city put this together, and I can email you that information of who's on it, Jim.
Okay, maybe Sarah Clark can address that too quickly.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
so that was formed unbeknownst, that wasn't really part of our discussions, and we were told that was formed, and these were the people on it, and that's all I know about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed that no one from this committee was even asked about it, so I'm just curious.
Right.
Are there any other committee member reports? I have a few, but I want to make sure that everybody else can be heard. I'll take that as a no. So I have a few announcements here. Mr. Kovich contacted me about a very unsafe driveway crossing south of the MTD terminal. So I talked to Jim Dewey, our sidewalk guru, and he has already installed compliant tactile domes. So when you're walking up Chapala, you can be notified that there is a driveway there. So I'm glad that got done. And then a quick thing here that I hope maybe Megan and Ashley can help me with. It's about the future of digital meetings. Conversations with city staff supported keeping digital meetings alive after we return to in-person meetings, because it makes it very accessible for people who can't drive or have physical disabilities, and the whole democratic process where people don't have to show up at meetings just to talk for 2 minutes. But recently there's been a couple board meetings that were done, board or committee meetings, I should say, that were done with no digital access at all. I'd gotten all those promises from Matt Four, who has left, so I don't know who to go to. So I just was told to talk to Sarah Gorman, the city clerk, but I'm not sure if that's the right way to go about this. So I hope Megan and you and Ashley, as the ADA coordinator, can make sure that we have something in place so that there's equipment such as in the Gebhardt Room and other places where people can have digital meetings so that some people can access those through Zoom. So I hope that you two can make sure that goes through. I will contact Sarah Gorman, but I'm not sure, like I said, if she's the one who does that. So are there any staff reports that want to come in here or staff announcements? Okay, so
Jim, I have no staff announcements other than the announcement about me serving as the
okay,
the
thank you,
staff
Ashley.
liaison.
I'll apologize for having the public comment out of place. On the one that's on the screen, it says public comments are first, but now we have public comments. So Sarita, if you could read out what
Mr. Chair, we have not received any written public comments, but Ms. Silver did have her hand raised.
okay.
I'm not sure if she still would like to speak. I'm going to allow her to talk, and also Nancy Capone would like to speak. She'll be second. So
Okay,
Barbara
thank you.
Silver, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, yes.
Oh, this is the first time I've participated this way. Well, hello, everybody. This is a kind of goodbye and hello. After my 8 years on this committee, I have transitioned, and you'll be seeing me regularly again. So starting in 2014, I joined this committee knowing just about nothing, and in the process have become something of an access activist. So, for example, while on this committee, I tried to facilitate a liaison with Downtown Parking Committee because we were having so many communication difficulties. At any rate, we were rebuffed. And so after my second term ended on this committee, I applied to Downtown Parking, and now I am an active participant of that committee, which meets monthly, and I'll be reporting back to you on a quarterly basis when you meet, and talking to Jim in between, or whoever the president is in between, about issues as they arrive, because as I explained to City Council, it is very difficult for this committee to react in real time when we meet only quarterly, or I should say when you meet only quarterly. So 2 issues that are important now to pay attention to is that the first, automated parking is being rolled out in the city lots. There were access and accommodation problems. I am working with city staff, and I encourage you to try those lots out and to see if, for those of you who have handicap placards, if you can be accommodated in those lots, and to get back to me then this, if there are problems. Then the second thing is, you may remember that Rhonda Hobbs talked to us about the sidewalk blockage by Chick-fil-A. Well, with her activism and a petition that she put together, City Council will be have a hearing this Tuesday, 4 o'clock, time certain, on declaring the troublesome drive-through at Chick-fil-A a public nuisance. Rhonda's concerned that while Chick-fil-A quickly mounted a solution to the problem by hiring staff to manage traffic, that after the City Council meeting, they might revert to their years-long former sidewalk blocking behaviors. Along with the sidewalks, it's the bike lanes and the traffic lanes, the bus stop, other businesses that have been blocked all these years. So take a look at the documentation that the city assembled for the hearing, and participate, either write or call in, or this is your time to act on this particular issue. It is a novel solution to the national Chick-fil-A problem, blocking blocking access. So those are my two reports to you from the field. So good luck, everybody, with your persistence, focus, flexibility, and just keeping on it, keeping at it, and keeping on it. So till next time.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, we have Nancy Capone. I'm going to allow you to speak, Ms. Capone. You may begin. You are still muted.
Okay. Okay. Is that working now? Okay. Thank you so much, Sarita. And I just want to thank all of you so much on the Access Advisory Committee, as always, for your incredible work on behalf of our community. And I just wanted to bring to your attention this morning two situations that I've run into recently in terms of access blockage. And the first one was at Flora de Mais on 29 East Cabrillo Boulevard. We tried to go there for dinner in December, and the valet parking had taken over the blue parking spot, and refused to allow me to park there, even though I have my blue parking pass. So that just seems like it's got to be illegal. I don't know what we can do about the valet parking, taking over the handicap spots, which is not their right. So that's one issue. And then the second location was in Montecito, but I'm told it's under city jurisdiction. And that's at 1046 Coast Village Road. And there, the restaurant parklet is blocking 2 blue parking spots and the entire path of travel from the one remaining blue spot. It's extremely dangerous. I had to take my wheelchair downhill into the car traffic and then up and around another hill, because they've completely blocked not only the other two the 2 blue parking spots, but the path of travel. So I did call their property manager, and he was very receptive and happy to hear from me. So I'm hoping that if we just keep communicating and working on everything, we'll continue to make progress. And that's all I have. I thank you again for all of your important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. We've had this problem for many years, and we've asked the police department to come talk to us about this, and they don't come in.
Yeah.
And so I can just suggest you try again with them, because you're right. It's totally illegal to block a blue curb space, and we have to do something about it. I don't know if Megan can have some ideas on this, or Ashley in her new position, but this is something that really has become a problem. So thank you so much for that.
Ms. Capone, before you go, one more time with the address on that first location.
She's muted. Unmute.
Okay, thank you. The first location is 29 East Cabrillo Boulevard, down on the waterfront, Flora de Mais. So I'd say it's generally in the area of the funk zone. But yeah, I couldn't believe the brazen attitude of the valet parker, who was so rude and just said, no way, you're not allowed to park here. And so we left. It was unfortunate. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 6 is approval of the minutes. I'll ask Sarita to read out the information.
Recommendation that the Access Advisory Committee waive further reading and approve the minutes from the regular meeting of November 5th, 2021, and the minutes of the special meeting of November 19th, 2021.
Okay, I'll first ask, are there any comments about the first meeting on November 5th? Any changes requested? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the November 5th minutes.
Motion to approve from Michael Rassler.
Second from Nick Kuntz.
Okay, and we'll vote on that. Sarita, can you read off the names?
Mr. Marston,
Yes.
Mr. Burnham,
Aye.
Mr. Kovich,
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz,
Aye.
Ms. Luckett,
Aye.
Mr. Rassler,
Aye.
Ms. Tejada.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we've moved and approved to accept the November 5th meetings, and now we can talk about the November 19th special election. Are there any changes requested for those minutes? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Just clarification, was there actually an election or just as a part of the meeting?
I think Jim misspoke. Special meeting,
Okay,
not
okay,
special
great.
election.
Great.
Sorry about that. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Okay, Sarita, roll call.
Mr. Marston,
Yes.
Mr. Burnham,
Aye.
Mr. Kovich,
Aye.
Mr. Coons,
aye.
Ms. Luckett,
Aye.
Ms. Rassler, Mr. Rassler,
Aye, both of us.
and Ms. Tejada.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Sarita for these minutes. It's a very good system we have now. We've worked for many years back and forth, and I think we're all happy now with the new minutes. Okay, number 7 is chair and vice chair elections. Sarita, you want to run that?
Oh my. Well, I will take nominations for chairman of or chairperson of the Access Advisory Committee.
I nominate James R. Marston. Karen Luckett speaking.
Are there other nominations?
I would second that nomination.
Well, thank you, Nick. I don't want to be the go-to guy all the time. If someone else wants this, I'd like to hear a nomination, but if not, I'll accept that. So thank you. Nomination for vice chair.
This is Bob Burnham. I will gladly serve as vice chair unless there's someone else. Actually, I'd like to nominate Michael Rassler, if you would be interested in vice chair.
Thank you, Robert. I'm interested, but unfortunately unable to commit the time, given my position here full-time. And I would certainly support, and I would vote for Bob for you to take that position.
Thank you. I would also would ask Suzanne, or I'm not sure. I think maybe it's proper protocol to allow our new members to serve for a year before they take on a office of chair or vice chair. Is that correct, Jim?
I don't know if it's protocol, but it's probably up there in best practices.
Yeah, I would rather wait, but I am curious. Are there any special duties of vice chair that's different from other board members?
Basically, the vice chair, like I did once, steps in to serve as chairman of a committee if the chairman is absent.
Right.
Like Jim was last summer, we had a special meeting of the resolutions to vote on our resolution. But I think that was the only time I served as interim chair.
Okay.
I can add that when I served as vice chair on this committee, there was a annual meeting of chairs and vice chairs within the city's various boards
Yes.
that I attended once.
Right. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, thanks. Anyway, is anyone else interested in serving as Nick? Are you interested?
No, thank you.
Okay. Then I'd
This
be
is, this
Go
is
ahead,
Suzanne
Suzanne.
Tejada. Bob, thank you for mentioning my name and offering me this. But I really feel very confident with you and Mr. Marston taking the lead on this, and I'd gladly serve under you guys, and not to say that it wouldn't be in the future, but I would prefer that you take that position. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then I accept.
Sarita, do we actually have to vote on this? Because it just says nomination. So can we accept this, or do we have to have a vote?
We should have a vote.
Okay.
So we have a nomination for Marston as chairman
I accept.
and a nomination of Robert Burnham for vice chair.
Can we
I
just
accept.
put it to one vote as a slate, or do we want to vote on each
We
individually?
can put it as one vote in the interest of time, I believe.
Okay.
So,
I accept both.
Mr. Burnham?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna take a vote. Mr. Marston,
Yes.
Mr. Burnham,
Aye.
Mr. Kovich,
Aye.
Mr. Coons,
Aye.
Ms. Luckett. Ms. Luckett,
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Rassler,
Aye.
and Ms. Tejada.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so moved. Okay, number 8, ADA Coordinators Report. Ashley?
Good morning. I have one item that I wanted to report back to the committee this morning, and that is there had been an issue at the corner of Bath and Figueroa. The address is 1034 Bath Street with some encroachments into the sidewalk and the landing area of the access ramp at that corner. And I'm happy to report that that violation has been abated and the sidewalk is now clear. So I wanted to bring that back to the committee.
Thank you. I think that was Nancy Capone's brought that to our attention. Nancy, is that the place you were concerned about?
She is muted, Mr. Chair, but I do remember that she was the person that brought that to.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, she brought it back to us when it became a problem again. So it sounds
Yes.
like we may need to keep our eyes on that spot.
Good. Ashley, can you tell us what kind of abatement was done here?
My understanding is that the tenant is no longer at that location. And
That
so
would-
that is how the,
Okay.
that's how it was ultimately resolved. So
Okay.
hopefully it doesn't become an issue again.
Okay, that would do it if the tenant's not there. Are there any public comments about that report? Okay, we have 2 reports coming up, special capital projects, a biannual report. And this is going to be from Eric Goodall, supervising engineer.
Jim,
Eric,
this is
would
Bob.
you- yeah.
Jim, this is Bob Burnham. Could I interrupt you real quick with Ashley's report? That's it's very brief. I wanted to mention 2 things. I did notice the truncated domes installed at the driveway just south of the transit center. It's really helpful. So thank you, Skylar, for bringing it to our attention, and for Jim Dewey for installing those so quickly. The second thing I want to mention to Ashley is there seemed to be some intermittent problems with the blinking pedestrian signals. I noticed some at State and Islay, State and Pedregosa, De La Vina and Cayaleras, and sometimes the buttons work, sometimes they're stuck. Are you aware of what's going on with those?
It's Apollo and Figueroa is sometimes another one. I haven't been there in the last couple of months.
Okay.
Bob, I'm not aware, but I can bring that back to our traffic engineering team and ask them to
Okay.
take a look. So it was State and Islay and Pedregosa, De La Vina and
Cayaleras.
Cayaleras.
Yeah, they seem to be intermittent, and I don't want to belabor the point, take up much time in the meeting, but it's just have them check around those periodically because they seem to work sometimes and not other times.
Sure, I'll have them take a look. And Mr. Kovich, what was that last location you mentioned?
Chapala and Figueroa. Like I said, I don't have recent reports on it, but it seems like last year was always needing to be checked and, several times restarted again.
That is an audible signal like Cabrillo and Chapala, but it does seem, as Skylar said, it seems to work intermittently. So not always very reliable.
Ashley, thanks for following through. And just for everybody's knowledge, the person to contact that I've got good results from him is Derek Bailey on those signals. So thanks, Ashley, for following through on that.
Certainly.
Okay, is Eric Goodall ready to tell us about the street capital improvements?
Good morning. Actually, this is Laura Yanez, principal engineer at the Streets Engineering section, Public Works. I'm filling in for Eric. He is actually out today, so I'll be giving the updates on our capital projects going to construction in the next 3 to 6 months. So with that, I'll get going. Good morning, Chair and committee members. Our first project going to construction, actually here soon, the project was awarded at council in February, is the East Side Paseos, and we combined that with the downtown De La Vina improvements project. These 2 projects will construct a bike boulevard along Aliso streets, as well as the connection on Coda. And then the downtown De La Vina project will build curb extensions on De La Vina from Victoria Street to Haley. We're hoping to break ground probably in early April. The next project is the West Side Paseos project, which will also create a bike boulevard on Gillespie, and a number of other improvements along Mitchell Terrena and San Andres streets. This will create a safer route for four local schools, making it safer to bike and walk on these very busy corridors. And so some of the improvements include access ramps, improved signage, high visibility bike lanes, traffic signals, traffic diverters, and new street lighting, amongst other improvements. And we're hoping to go to construction in June. The next project is the Cabrillo Roundabout at Los Patos Drive. That one's pretty self-explanatory. It'll be a new roundabout at that intersection, along with wider sidewalks around the roundabout, eventually connecting to the new undercrossing of the railroad bridge there. That project.
Laura, this is Jim. Real quick, you mentioned the sidewalk extension. That's the same as a bulb out?
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Curb extensions, yes. Yeah, and so the roundabout will likely be in construction midsummer. Next project is one that just kicked off, which is improvements at the depot lot. The improvements are ADA accessible routes and landings for the buses that drop off bus users. And so that one just started. I know my team is taking a look at some of the details and what we can do there. And then
Ashley, this is Bob. What's the location of that?
the depot lot.
Yes.
We're looking at where, so the buses currently drop off bus riders on the north side, I guess, of the depot lot. They typically just find a spot and drop off people anywhere. And so we're hoping to create a standard landing that'll have an accessible route to the entrance of the depot lot or eventually the sidewalks.
And when you mentioned, is this the depot lot at Carrillo and Castillo or down at the Amtrak station?
Amtrak station, I apologize.
Amtrak, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And just a quick question. This is Jim. Is this on based on the ADA suit that was done and they hired a supervisor to look into that? Is this?
Yes,
Do
I
we have
believe
that?
this. Oh, go ahead.
Well, do we have that report yet? Is it finalized? I'm not sure what's going on with that report.
I don't know the details about the report, but I can definitely get more information from our downtown parking staff. But I do believe it's something that came from the DOJ. So
Okay,
like
thank
I
you.
said, yeah, we can get you more information if you'd like. And then the last part.
I would like, thank you.
Okay, I'll have Sarita send that out. And then the last project going to construction here soon is the HSIP Cycle 9 projects, which will build curb extensions at Bath Street and Sola, Bath Street and Victoria, Cannon Perdido and Nopal, and Old Coast Highway at Salida Street. So hoping to get to construction in June with that project as well. And then in the more distant future, will be the State Street undercrossing project, which will likely start construction in late summer, widening the sidewalks under the State Street undercrossing. And then the MODOC multi-use path, which will be the connection between the Las Positas multi-use path and the county's Oberon Trail. And the project they're starting here soon on the county portion as well. So with that, that wraps up my streets capital updates. I'm available for questions if you have any on any of these projects.
Laura, this is Bob. I noticed, and I live on Chapala, so I noticed a lot of construction up and down Chapala between, I think it's Islay or Valerio, all the way down past Mitchell Terrena. They're putting in, I think, new curb cuts. They've already done some at Sola and Chapala. They're putting in electrical conduit yesterday as I walked down through that construction, and the guys are very communicative about helping me get around the construction. But is that on your list? It's a current project that's ongoing right now.
On Chapala, I'm trying to think of which one that is. And it's not coming to mind. Which, do you know, Ashley?
Is that related to the pavement, the overlay project?
I believe so, yes. 'Cause they're putting in-
21B.
Oh, yes, sorry. We just started last Monday. So
Yeah, because we
yep.
got notices. We got
Yes.
notices about that, and so the communication's been pretty good as
Good.
far as what to expect. The other question I had is, I know they're putting in a major pipeline from the desal plant up Garden Street. Is that mentioned in your projects?
So that's actually a water resources project, but we do work closely together, and we're actually taking advantage of the fact that their work is causing a lot of disruption, and we're hoping to be able to repave and just kind of do like a complete project, not just the pipeline, but be able to repave the street and actually install some additional ramps where needed along Garden. So again, it's not our team's project, but we work closely together with water resources.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Laura. This is Jim. I have one question. All these street and curb improvements, these are going to have accessible tactile domes for the crosswalks and the curb cuts. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, all new ramps, and then if there's compliant ramps that don't have domes, we do retrofit.
Thank you so much for your work and your good report. Are there
Thank
any
you.
public comments about that?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. The next thing is the facilities projects biannual report. And I have here listed will be from Jesse Wheeler and Angela Osland.
Thank you, Chair Marsden and members of the committee. My name is Angela Osland. I'm the Facilities and Fleet Manager that oversees both of those divisions. Recently, we promoted Jesse Wheeler into the Acting Supervising Engineer position. And because he oversees these projects more closely than I am, at this time, I'd really like to introduce him to you and give him an opportunity to speak and let you get to know him a little bit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wheeler.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jesse Wheeler, as Angela introduced. Thank you. Wanted to give a couple updates on a few of our projects that are in process and are pending. The first one being the Lewis Lowry Davis Center. We have completed the exterior upgrades to the site, which were new ramps and new accessible ramps and new access to the front door. So that one is nearing completion, and we are also preparing for phase 2, which is some of the exterior doors as well to be replaced. Second item would be the City Hall restroom on the second floor, and we have permits approval, and we are going out to construction, advertising for construction here in the next week or two, actually. And we're estimating to start this construction in the summer. So good news on that. The big one for me is coming up at the library, which includes the whole plaza renovation. And this is a huge accessibility upgrade, which is whole new ramps and plaza up on the upper level and the lower level. And this will connect both the upper level and lower, and as well as the Paseos that adjoin them. Also included in this project is the interior elevator. This is a new accessible elevator since the old one is not actually accessible, and this will connect the third floor to the basement level children's center. So we're excited to have these things going, and we are expecting to close bid on Wednesday of next week, and hopefully to start the construction in July. And finally, we're also going out to advertise for design at 630 Garden Street. And with this is going to include an exterior and a revised exterior approach to the main lobby. And then also we'll have a accessible consideration for at the muni tennis courts and the bathroom and the restrooms there. They will also have a ADA expanded restrooms. So we're going to use a little more of the space to actually have bathrooms be accessible. So, and that's about it for the projects coming up. Any questions on those?
Yeah, this
Yes,
is
yes.
Nick Kuntz.
Yep.
What, I'm sorry, can you repeat the first location that was on your list?
The Louis Lowry Davis Center.
Okay, and with regard to the City Hall, I thought I understood that the elevator was a higher priority than the bathroom on the second floor. Can you speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Kuntz. This is Angela Osland. We're working on the elevator project at the same time. It's currently under its final phase of review for obtaining permits. So those projects are concurrent, but that elevator isn't slated to be constructed until after and advertised until after those permits are completed. I'm sure as a number of you know, design takes quite a bit of time to do. So we want to be a little bit conservative in bringing construction updates to you when we don't have a final permit yet, but we do believe it's getting close.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Jesse, go ahead, Bob. No, you go ahead, Bob.
All right, Angela and Jesse, thank you for updating us. Years ago, I attended some workshops on the Library Plaza Improvement Project, and I know the design has really been under a lot of back and forth. A couple things. When do you expect it to be finally completed, number one? And number two, I would like maybe members of this committee to go do an on-site visit and really check out all the accessibility features that you've improved in that project. Is that possible?
Absolutely. I'm available and proud of the project to be done. So yes, I will absolutely be available for that.
Okay, thank you.
And to add to that, Mr. Burnham, the question that you had asked about construction timeline, what we'll do is after we award the contract here shortly, we'll give the construction contractor time to obtain materials and supplies. Knowing what we know about the current supply chain shortages, we want to go ahead and front load the opportunity for them to get started without a lot of delay. Excuse me. And so with that, the construction timeline we'll expect to start this summer and will run for a full year. However, due to the various parts of this major project, with the elevator component, the lower level library construction component, and the plaza component, we believe some of those will be completed a little bit earlier in the overall phasing.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. This is Jim. I want to thank Jesse and Angela for this report. Jesse, congratulations on your promotion. I just want to point out that we as a committee have been trying for many, many years to get the library elevator and the City Hall elevator, and it's very rewarding to find out that finally funds have been found and work is going to take care of these two major accessibility problems. The elevator at City Hall is way too small, and so is the one at the library. So I'm just glad that we're getting this done. And I think this committee probably had some help in getting this going. So thank you all. Are there any public comments about this report?
Mr. Chair, Elizabeth Sorgman has raised her hand if she'd like.
Okay.
We'll wait till the slide is up for public speak. And Ms. Sorgman, you may speak. Please unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. Your hand is raised.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm having issues here with unmuting myself. So my name's Elizabeth Sorgman, and I was employed by the city of Santa Barbara at the building department for 17 years. And so I'm familiar with Angela. Hello, Angela. And just wanted to make a couple of comments because I have reviewed and plan checked some of these facilities. So I did plan check or the initial plan check for the restrooms and some of the exterior work at the library. So I know that the city hall, it's great to be able to get the elevator in there. But features of being able to get into the actual door, those are not compliant yet. So even though we have an elevator, we still won't be able to get into the main entry door. So at what point will those features be upgraded? And I haven't gone by the plaza at the library, but I'm sure it's really beautiful. So I'm really excited to be able to go by there. Thank you.
Do we have any comment on the problem with those doors being accessible?
Thank you, Chair Marsden. Yes, this is an item that we are looking at correcting in a future project that's a companion project.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the reports?
Other hands are raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it's time for a break. How about if we come back in 5 minutes at 10:30?
Sounds good.
Okay. One more thing, I was going to say that Ashley said that Brian was probably coming back depending on the job at the airport, but I just want to say that I especially, but I think we all appreciate Brian's good work in leading our group. I think he was the best we've ever had, if I may say. And so I just want to appreciate what Brian has done for the group. Okay, the next item is outdoor dining operations update. And we're going to receive a report from Sarah Clark, who's the acting downtown plaza and parking manager. Sarah?
Chair Marston and committee members, this is Sarah Clark. Again, acting downtown plaza and parking manager here in downtown parking. And we wanted to talk to you today about the current status of outdoor dining, particularly the expansions into the right-of-way on State Street and the parklets throughout the city. So first I wanted to start by giving you a little status update on the status of the sidewalk enforcement effort that was begun over the summer once council gave direction to remove all unlicensed items from the sidewalks in order to provide a clear path of travel. So, you know, as I believe you're aware, we issued any number of notices of violation, quite a few, I believe, at least 60 or so of those. To businesses, most complied fairly quickly, and we didn't really have any issues, so we were very pleased with that. We did have a handful who we ended up having to issue administrative citations to and assess fines. To date, we've collected about $1,900 in fines. There are still some outstanding, but those are going through the normal collection process that the city uses a contractor for. So those will be continue to be pursued as needed. And we did unfortunately have to issue misdemeanor or file misdemeanor criminal charges against 2 restaurants who refused to comply after receiving multiple citations. So of those 2, one of those cases has been resolved and they have cleared out. I received word this week that we believe that the other one has also finally removed their items from the sidewalk. We're still sort of waiting to see as we go through the evenings and the weekends whether that condition remains. But our city prosecutor is actively working through the court system to resolve that matter. So, you know, it's regrettable that it has taken this amount of time, but we are pursuing the legal remedies that we have available to us to have that resolved. So moving on, following that, our initial push there was really to focus on the sidewalk and on clearing out the sidewalk. But of course, we're aware that there are other issues with the facilities themselves. So to that end, the city retained the services of a CASP to advise us on how best to sort of review and assess accessibility for those facilities. It's a little bit different than for something that would be on private property. When you're in the public right of way, there isn't sort of the same set of, it's not like the building code exactly applies into the public right of way. So we have to find different ways to make things accessible when they're in the right of way. So towards the end of last year, staff had a training with the CASP. The staff that are currently performing this enforcement are not usually the staff that do accessibility enforcement or code enforcement in this way. So we had training with the CASP. We've had the CASP review our accessibility guidelines that we've provided as a part of the guidelines that the businesses are required to adhere to for operating in the right of way. And at that point, we sort of had to put that effort on pause. And that's because we were developing the ordinance that would become the economic recovery extension and transition ordinance. And that's the ordinance that replaces the emergency ordinance that is currently authorizing the businesses in the right of way, which expires on March 8th. So at that point, we were contemplating perhaps some very significant changes to the business facilities, particularly on State Street. As was mentioned earlier in this meeting, they are required to adhere to a 20-foot fire lane requirement, and that is effective on March 8th. So many of those businesses are going to have to scale back considerably. And for the ones that built structures, some of those are going to have to be significantly altered or rebuilt. And there was also a consideration of whether or not to require the business facilities to be made entirely portable. So removing those structures entirely and just going to portable setups. And so given that there were all of these large changes pending, we did not want to require the businesses to make changes and then ask them a few months later to make another set of changes. So we figured it would be most effective if we coupled future accessibility enforcement efforts with this larger effort that's going to require pretty significant changes to the business facilities on State Street. So as was touched on earlier, and I just want to, I believe Committee Member Tejada brought it up, Council did establish an ad hoc subcommittee for interim operations. I believe Jessica Grant is here also. She can talk a little bit more about that. Jessica, are you available?
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry.
I was just trying to find the unmute camera button. Yes, I'm Jessica Grant. I'm the new interim Public Works downtown manager. So working again, as Sarah mentioned, on the interim of State Street, which under the newly updated ordinance would go through December 30th of 2020, December 31st of 2023. Again, our primary focus at this point in time is establishing the 20-foot fire lane. There are 45 affected businesses that either have outdoor dining or outdoor facilities on State Street. And to date, we've had about 26 meetings with businesses over the past couple of weeks, and we're still continuing to have meetings. But that really is also providing not only to go over the regulations for the 20-foot fire lane, but the opportunity to also evaluate ADA at each of the businesses as well. And then as far as for the interim, the ad hoc committee, again, we've had a few meetings, but mainly it has just focused, again, the first initial meetings on the fire lane compliance and communication rollout with the affected businesses. But we will have future meetings as well to continue to evaluate certain items with respect to portability, if there's any special events and those particular items as well. And as far as for the fire lane compliance, that is to be in effect by compliance by March 8th. So just in a few weeks. I'll
Thank
pass
you,
it
Jessica.
to Sarah. Yes, if you wanted to add any more, I know that you have some more
Sure.
information as well, but happy to answer any questions. And I also believe that we have Dan Hinchke on the call as well. Dan, if you wanted to say a few items.
Thank you, Jessica. Honorable Chair Marston, members of the committee. I was actually going to speak after Sarah, but I might as well go right now. I just want to make it clear that under both the old ordinance, what we call the EERO, and the new ordinance, which is the ERETO, the requirements for ADA compliance are incorporated into the guidelines. And they are, so the accessibility requirements for into and out of parklets from all areas of State Street, both the roadway area and the sidewalk area, so that there's equal accessibility. The table requirements are in the guidelines. And so those are enforceable under the ordinance. And we have provided information to staff as to the appropriate enforcement tools. So we do have tools under the existing ordinance for the facilities that are out there now and the facilities as they will be modified to comply with the 20-foot requirement. So if there was any question by members of the committee as to whether we could enforce, for example, ramp requirements or table requirements, we can and have been.
Thank you, Dan. So yeah, just a few things to wrap up. As Ms. Grant mentioned, we are in the process of going through and meeting with individual businesses. So we're taking this opportunity to really do one-on-one education and outreach. In addition to discussing the fire lane requirements with them, we are also discussing their accessibility requirements and their compliance with the guidelines. So the two main things that we're focused on are the ramps and tables. So we're finding that most places have ramps. Some of them are quite compliant. So we've given, diagrams, guidelines, and checklists. But the main thing that we are seeing at the different businesses is lack of an accessible table or accessible seating. And so the restaurants that we're speaking to believe that they were in compliance. They believe that the tables that they were provided were accessible, or they're similar to tables that they provide elsewhere in the restaurant. And so, we're using this opportunity to give them information about how they can, the types of tables that they need to provide and what constitutes an accessible table. And so, we're expecting that we'll start to see those be updated going forward. So from here, where we're going to go is, once that March 8th deadline comes along, we're going to be going back out and doing additional inspections, obviously, to make sure that we've got compliance with the fire lane requirement on State Street. And at the same time, we're going to be taking a look at the accessibility issues or accessibility items at each of the facilities. And we'll use that opportunity to issue what are called notices of violation. That's sort of the first step in the informal enforcement process. That's where we document any violations and we tell them exactly what they need to do in order to resolve those violations. And they're also given a deadline at that point. If they fail to meet that deadline, then we would move on into an administrative citation process, similar to the sidewalk process. That'd be issuing a series of administrative citations that come along with fines. And then if there's just a refusal to comply, then it would move again back into the misdemeanor charges. But again, we hope not to have to get that far. So we are expecting that because of the sort of lead time that is necessary for restaurants, if they do have to order new tables, that we're going to have to give them a decent buffer of time in order to comply with that requirement, as long as they're moving forward in good faith. But that so far is our plan for proceeding from here. So that's all I have for you today, and we'll move to the committee for questions.
This is Bob Burnham. Question for all three of you. I'm not sure how this applies as far as enforcement, but one thing I've noticed walking down through State Street is the presence and maybe the proliferation of bicycles parked not on their designated bike pole. There's bike poles, with the securements to lock a bike on a bike stanchion, but also along the railings and stanchions of some of these parklets. And I've walked down and I catch myself on the handlebars of these bikes that are all over the place. Is there any way to, I don't know if you can quantify or examine these types of added clutter, because they're going to be hit and miss. People are going to bring their bikes and park them wherever they can find a spot. But how does that figure into your overall compliance of safe path of travel?
Thank you, Robert, for bringing that to our attention. There is a fair amount of, yes, bike hitching posts in the promenade area. And then, of course, there's bike racks for the public bike share system. But thank you for that. I think we'll, as we're out in the field almost daily, we will look out for that. I know in the interim, at one point, it had more like a larger corral for some additional bike parking. And then that was since removed because we had some complaints, I believe, on that style, but we can certainly re-evaluate that to see if more bike parking areas are needed.
Thank you. Okay.
I have some questions. Karen Luckett here. First of all, how many businesses did you say have outdoor parklet facilities on the State Street?
45.
Okay. And that's remained steady throughout the pandemic?
This is Sarah Clark again. No, it hasn't. It's sort of evolved and changed. Most of them were constructed basically as soon as authorization was given from City Council to do that. So we did see most of them spring up right away, but the situation on State Street continues to change. We've of course had businesses that have closed, and we've had other businesses that have moved in and added new enclosures. So, we get a fairly steady stream of requests for new facilities, and similarly, we have other ones that are discontinued. So it does sort of change as we move along.
Okay, and the facilities that got fines, were they because they were on the sidewalk area? And is there only 2 of them, you said?
Yes, it's because they were on the sidewalk area. It was more than 2, I want to say, and I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number, but I believe that we cited around 8 to 10 different businesses that weren't compliant after receiving their initial notice of violation. It was only 2 of them that did not resolve the violations after receiving a fine, and that then had to go on to the criminal prosecution.
Okay, and can somebody answer, is there a plan when the parklet expires in March of 2023? Are there any plans to actually turn the street into a level promenade?
So that would be the jurisdiction of the State Street master planning effort in the State Street Advisory Committee. So that whole master planning effort is centered around planning for the future and the new design of State Street. So it may very well be that portions of it are permanently made into a promenade or the whole thing, but that is what that process is evaluating right now.
Okay, and I noticed that when you leave the sidewalk, often people use a wooden ramp, and there's a curb height discrepancy of maybe 2 to 3 inches. Is there anybody addressing a threshold leveling type of implementation via some something, because as an occupational therapist, I was looking into maybe rubber thresholds or rubber mats or some kind of device that would make it so that there's not that inaccessible threshold.
Sure. Are you, if you have specific examples, we would love to hear them. You know, for the ones on State Street, we know we've identified a few that do need to address that sort of issue. But if you know of other ones, please do let us know. They are required to, if they're providing a ramp, then it needs obviously to be flush to the curb, so that there's not any sort of a gap or a sort of a bump that they have to go over. For the ones that have platforms, you know, those in the cases where they are built to the grade of the curb, again, we ask that that be flush and that there not be any sort of lip that's happening there, or certainly not a gap. So, you know, like I said, we're only aware of a few instances where we have seen issues of that nature. We certainly do have other sort of non-compliant ramps that we have asked the businesses to address, but that particular issue, please let me know if you've got specific locations for that, and we can go check it out again.
Okay, and lastly, like there is designated parking for the handicap, I know this crowded table and these little parklets is a problem. Is it possible there can be 1 or 2 tables designated for wheelchair access?
So the businesses are required to provide 5% of their seating in the outdoor business facility as accessible seating. And so that is a table that has to meet standards for the height, the knee clearance underneath, and also the sort of clearance around it and the path of travel to it. Now, because we are going to a wider fire lane, these outdoor business facilities are going to have to get a bit narrower. So they're going to come down. Most of them are only going to be about 9 feet wide. Of course, that doesn't really leave room for a table with an accessible path of travel that goes the whole length of the enclosure. So what we are advising businesses to do is to place their accessible seating adjacent to either the ramp or sort of the accessible entranceway to the business, so that there is a clear path of travel to that table. Now there may be, you know, chairs there, you know, under ordinary circumstances that would need to be removed, but what we're looking for is that the table itself can accommodate somebody who uses a wheelchair.
Just my final comment, a question is, having lived overseas and traveled in Europe and lived in the Middle East, every restaurant has outdoor seating, but they don't contain themselves in a parklet. They're just chairs on the street. The nice thing is the street is level. And I think that's why the people are saying we need to have parklets, because of that curb street discrepancy and the slope of the street. So if the city considers at some point to make State Street a promenade, I think the issue of parklets, you know, wooden enclosures would be eliminated, and people could just put their chairs out and bring them in, and then we could easily remove them for parades. So hopefully that becomes a reality.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments on this?
Mr. Chairman?
This is Suzanne. This is Suzanne Tejada. Thank you, Karen, for your comments. These are all things that are being considered and discussed with the State Street Access Advisory Committee. There are issues regarding flood waters and drainage and et cetera, et cetera. So those topics of leveling the street, all that will be discussed in the master plan discussion when we hire a consultant, et cetera. So please keep your comments flowing, and we will make sure that they're brought up. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Nick, is that you?
Yeah, this is Nick Kuntz, and I can't adequately express my frustrations with the city's absolutely glacial progress in enforcing accessibility in the public right of way. We brought concerns of the EERO to City Council before it was ratified. that fell on deaf ears. For 2 years, this committee has been advocating for improved accessibility and enforcement of civil rights, frankly, in the outdoor dining program. And we've been told for 2 years that well, at least for the last year, that we now have the tools to enforce it. For the first year, nothing was done except we were stonewalled. Now we've been hearing for a year how the tools are there, but I'm failing to see progress. I was told, I believe it was a year ago, that Ms. Clark was our contact for these things. And so in September, I brought to Ms. Clark's attention concerns regarding Alicia Patisseria and Cafe on Canon Perdido. I was told there would be a visit in October. And since then, emails seeking updates have gone unanswered, and the problems there continue to be unabated 6 months later. Today's comments indicating that city would be providing a buffer or lead time in order to order tables does not sit well with me at all after 2 years of waiting for actions. And this all underscores to me the importance of expanding the outdoor dining licensing program. And furthermore, I'd like to request that this committee agendize a discussion of an AAC resolution regarding the city's response to accessibility in the public right of way.
Thank you, Nick. This is Jim. I think I agree with you. We need to do something. I'll get back to that in a minute, but I want to make sure that Jessica knows this because she's kind of new to this division. Back in May, members of our committee wrote to City Council and the city administrator saying you need to have ADA guidelines in the PDFs you were sending out.
May of 2020.
Yes, what did I say?
Just last May.
Okay, May of 2020, correct. Finally, we got them in the fall, and this is a great statement everybody's making here, but we hear about education and compliance. No one has the nerve to actually fine businesses because downtown parking pretty much just does whatever the businesses need. We have heard from Rob Dayton in October and November of 2020 at City Council saying we're going to start fining people this week. Now, downtown parking always talks about how they don't have no money. If you had done a fining as was promised us, you'd have a lot of income. But that's a side comment. But I'm tired of this, like Nick, that we're told, oh, we have the tools. Okay, we know what the guidelines show, and it's very simple. There's a sketch of the ramps that must have a wheel guide on both sides so you don't run off the ramp. There are still today ramps that don't have any wheel guides, and yet we're told that you're out there every day doing this stuff. And of course, Sarah brought up the accessible tables. There's a diagram in the guidelines showing what that means, and no one seems to have changed their tables. So after a year and a half, we're told, oh, we'll give them extra time to find a table. This is ridiculous and an affront to the civil rights of people with disabilities. There's no reason that I can find where people from your group haven't gone out and said, that's not accessible. There's even people who put stickers on their table saying it's accessible when it's not. So I would like an answer to that. Could I get an answer to those questions? Why are ramps and accessible tables still not compliant after almost 2 years?
So Chair Marston, this is Sarah Clark again. I can speak to certainly the table issue. This comes down to, frankly, education. As I addressed earlier, the staff who've been tasked with enforcing this are not, typically, we do not have anything to do with accessibility enforcement or building code enforcement or code enforcement in general. And so this has been a learning process for us. Initially, when we got the guidelines or the requirements for tables, it was our understanding that the tables with a pedestal type base could be acceptable as long as the knee clearance was, or as long as it was a type of pedestal that could be sort of maneuvered around a wheelchair, basically. We found out later that that is not, once we met with the CASP and we got further information, that it just needs to be measured from the edge of the base. So initially, when we reviewed a lot of those tables, we thought that they were accessible. And so, we've learned differently, and now we are trying to pass that information along to the restaurants, to get that up to date. But the effort and the intent was to be sure that there was an accessible table there. So that was just a change in our understanding in that case. As to the ramps, again, we did issue citations for ramps in some cases. We did issue, notices of violation for ramps in some cases. And upon, further inspection, we do know that there are a few out there that still do not have the edge protection that's needed, and they've been notified of that. And so we'll be, trying to move forward to get that taken care of.
Well, thank you. But the problem is I walked this street with Rob, with Victor, with Brian, Steve Sessler. We've pointed out these things over and over again. And after a year and a half, there's still no compliance. So I don't care about what you say about education. It's called give them a fine and make sure it's done, or you close them down. You're giving away free space to make money on. This is public property that we've all paid for with taxes. And yet somehow you don't care to even say your curb ramp is dangerous to the safety of people. And your tables are not accessible. And a year and a half later, we're being told, oh, you're looking at it. Now, I'm glad that the CASP people were hired finally, but that I and the ad hoc committee, which I want to make sure Jessica knows, we formed an ad hoc committee to work on this. And yet now you have a new group at the city and we're not even included. And we're the ones who know accessibility. But the question is, why haven't you done anything about these curb ramps and tables? The diagram in the guidelines shows where the clearance is. It's not just a knee clearance. It's the getting your wheels into up by the pedestal. And this has been ridiculous, and I don't know what is going on. And I'll leave that, but I'm very disappointed, like Nick, that the city doesn't even care about civil rights for people with disabilities.
I reject the notion that this is about education. This committee has been educating city staff for 2 years on this subject. And the pedestal tables were rejected early on in the round base pedestal tables, where it was explained to downtown parking that was not acceptable early on. We provided diagrams. Rob Dayton, I realize he's gone, but he and Mr. Garza put out a series of these informative guidelines that were ever changing. They would put in our recommendations, take them out, and it was all just fluff. It was all just for nothing. There was never any intent to enforce any of it. And I feel like that's still the situation today. There's a bare minimum effort being shown in an attempt to appease this committee and or the public, but the response has been woefully inadequate.
Thanks, Nick. I have to agree with you. I've walked it, like I said, with Rob and Victor over a year ago. And this education stuff, I would hear them talk to the restaurant owners. You must do this, you must do that. And then nothing was done. So a year and a half later, it's still not done. There's no reason why you haven't gotten these curb ramps fixed and the accessible tables fixed a year ago or
there's
more.
A reason. They're prioritizing public or the profits of these restaurants over our civil rights.
Well, that's true.
Plain
Right.
and simple facts, and they're never going to admit that.
Can I make a question, please?
Through the chair and committee member Coons, Sarah and I are both just weeks into our interim roles. I just want to assure you that we're having the conversations. We understand the seriousness of ADA compliance. And as Ms. Clark laid out, we do have a path forward. I cannot speak to what has been done in the past, but I know that both her and I are out there having the conversations, and we're moving forward.
I don't believe it's been weeks for Ms. Clark. I think Ms. Clark's been working with us, or assigned to work with us, for almost a year now.
I was appointed at the end of December. Prior to that, informally, I was handling some of these duties. I was handling the enforcement effort earlier, or at least marshaling, other staff for enforcement beginning, in this past summer. Unfortunately, workload issues mean that we have to, we don't have the capacity to, be doing daily inspections.
I've been hearing about capacity for 2 years too. So if capacity is the problem, how do we solve that with staffing? Okay, I've recommended several times that we get some temporary staffing in place. You levy the fines, you pay for your temporary staffing. It's not rocket science.
Can I make a comment, please? Sarah, when you give out the paper for compliance to the restaurants, the parklets, is it recommendations? I mean, what I'm thinking of is the city, to have a business with a sign out front, the city requires a certain size sign. And I believe they recommend certain companies to buy the sign from. So there are absolute requirements for signage, with a permit to open a business. So is there such a thing as a permit at this point to operate a parklet, which includes mandated accessibility thresholds and tables? And the question about enforcement is, when you give out these recommendations, or this is what the city wants, is there anything included that if you don't comply by X date, you will be fined this much? If you don't comply by X date, you will be fined this much. So in other words, a real financial impetus for these parklets to be accessible, rather than just a paper, oh, this is what we recommend, or this is what we'd like. So sort of more muscle behind what we're asking them, or permit, saying, listen, you're going to have to buy a permit, or you are going to get fined. So does that exist?
Through the chair, committee member Luckett, there is no permitting process in place for the on-street business facilities. There is the outdoor dining license agreement that is in place for sidewalk dining, but there is no permit process in place during this interim period for businesses that are in the street.
So we're calling it, go, Nick.
I have advocated for 2 years that this parklet process be run through the sidewalk dining licensing program. Makes it a whole lot easier to enforce these rules. You don't comply, you lose your license, period. End of story. Simple, cut and dry. But city staff has resisted this because they want to accommodate these restaurants and they don't have the bandwidth to do it right. So it's all fly by night. Rob Dayton says, put it up, we'll judge its merits later. And here we are, 2 years later, still being excluded from dining.
And this is Jim. I'd like to also say that, Karen, you mentioned the fine and the what happens if you don't fix it. That was all put out by Rob Dayton in October of 2020. And this committee has not done anything about that. But the fine schedule is there, and I'm sure that Sarah will agree that there is a fine schedule in the paperwork, but it's not being done.
Well, actually, to be fair, she did report on the fines that were levied and collected and the ones that are being having some trouble in collections. But I'm not impressed by the numbers. It sounds to me like there was 2 locations that were cited. And
That was for sidewalk dining. I
yeah,
think
I know, but the
yeah.
same citations could be used for these lack of tables and lack of ramps and all
Yeah.
these other things that we've been waiting on for 2 years.
Well, the big difference here was sidewalk dining was passed by city council, and of course, Dan Henschke and those people got right on there and got those cleared out pretty darn quickly, except for the 2, which are now kind of okay. But no one has ever gone after all the parklets, not just State Street, but the ones on the side streets. Many of them don't even have a way to get into the table. Some of them are fixed tables that there's no way a wheelchair can get into, and yet no one does anything about it. But
Sarah,
the fine schedule is there, but it's not being used.
okay, so you said what was given to the parklets was a paper called guidance.
So there is, the city has issued guidelines. There are 2 sets of guidelines. There are parklet guidelines and there are guidelines for guide to operating a business on State Street. Contained within those guides is a section called accessibility requirements that includes the requirements for creating an accessible dining space.
Okay, so what if that paper were reissued and it was titled Parklet Mandates? Okay, accessibility mandates or else. And what if the people who run around in those little carts and give tickets out to cars that are parked an extra minute, actually one of them walks State Street, once a week or whatever, once a month, and give out fines if they're not in compliance. I mean, we're talking about 45 restaurants and some of them are in compliance. So we're talking about maybe 20 that we need to get in shape with, not guidance, because that word can easily be ignored. But when it comes as a mandate or else, maybe compliance will be followed better.
Jim, this is Bob. And what I think what Karen's talking about is a solid or a maybe quantifiable mechanism enforcement. Exactly what she's mentioning. How, and I know the parking, downtown parking has been a stumbling block in the past because they're so tied into promoting the downtown businesses. But I like Karen's idea of reissuing something, a manifestation of these guidelines in a more of a mandated type of communique. Just throwing that out to the committee.
Thanks, Bob. I just want to point out the real problem was that when this started, Rob Dayton thought it was going to be temporary, quote unquote, even though there's no relaxation of ADA for a one-day event. Okay, you must have a one-day event be totally accessible. He never wanted to have permits. Many other cities do get permits and then they have enforcement. I want to jump off for a minute. I got a note from the former ADA task person, Ms. Sorgman. Can you raise your hand and give us the comment that you wanted to make?
Mr. Marston, she has raised her hand.
Okay.
Also, Accessible Santa Barbara has been waiting also for public comment. So.
Okay, let's hear from those before we continue.
All right, I'm going to allow Accessible Santa Barbara to speak. You may speak now.
Hi, this is Will Railing for Accessible Santa Barbara. Accessible Santa Barbara is an unincorporated nonprofit association. I agree with Committee Member Kuntz's suggestion that it may be time for this committee to consider taking a more concrete step toward announcing its disappointment with the inaccessibility in this program. This conversation reminds me so much of the conversation you hear about the ADA sometimes. 30 years after the ADA was passed, somebody points out a problem with a facility and they're told, just give us some time to fix it. And on the current trajectory, your children may be sitting on this committee and calling for accessibility in the permanent outdoor dining program 20 years from now. And I think about that original creation of this program. I was on the city council meeting in May 2020, and committee member Kuntz made a Cassandra-like comment. He said, please don't do this to the city council. He said, please don't do this without requiring it to be accessible. I don't want to come back a year from now and be saying, I told you so. And, it's what's happened now over the last 2 years is really, really sad. This is a program that it's often discussed as a program to help the businesses. Well, that's not really correct. Okay, this was for the public. This is for the people. The city wanted to create the ability for people to be able to enjoy restaurants outdoors safely. And in this program, the city has decided it's okay to exclude some of our people, some of our citizens. It's okay to discriminate. Chair Marston's correct. There's no allowance for temporary things to be inaccessible. A one-day festival needs to provide access for all. So day to day, it's a new offense. And why denying access to this program for outdoor dining? Why is it any different than a city which would deny access to its pools or its libraries or its bus station or its sidewalks? So I like Mr. Kuntz's idea. This committee could vote today to request agendizing for the May meeting, a resolution simply expressing the committee's disappointment with the lack of accessibility in this program after 2 years. It will have been 2 years by the time you meet in May. And I think having that coming on the agenda in May would be a little something to hopefully encourage the city to actually do something in the next 3 months. And if based on the progress that occurs in the next 3 months, this committee may or may not choose to pass that resolution in May. I don't see anything in your bylaws that prevents this committee from passing a resolution. I'm not aware of when it's actually been done. But I don't see any reason why you couldn't today ask to have it agendized. The draft could be done by the outdoor dining subcommittee, and it could just be very simple with a couple of whereas clauses and an expression of disappointment. And I think that sort of concrete step would go a little further than these sort of endless promises that give us more time. We need more staffing. I mean, if you had a lunch counter discriminating, not letting people of color eat there, would they seriously say, oh, I'm sorry, we just don't have the staffing. I'm sorry, give us some more time and we'll stop discriminating. I hate to see accessibility as a civil right being treated as a second-class civil right. And at this point, that's what's happening here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Railing. And I want to butt in as chair and say, I think right now we should have a vote to see whether we want to make a resolution that would be on the next agenda. Can you call a roll call?
Bob Burnham, so moved.
I second Nick Kuntz.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I need to have the resolution stated by a member of the committee, not a member of the public, please.
I made the initial recommendation, Ms. King, that we agendize the discussion. We don't have a resolution now. We want to agendize discussion per Brown Act to form a resolution. And hopefully by the time we get to discussing that in May, it'll be a moot point.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we have a vote on that, please?
Certainly. Mr. Marston?
I agree.
Bear with me here a second. Mr. Burnham?
Aye.
Mr. Kovich?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Ms. Luckett?
Aye.
Mr. Rassler?
Aye.
And Ms. Tejada?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Now, I think we have another public comment from Ms. Sorkman.
Yes, Ms. Sorgman? You may speak now, Ms. Sorgman.
All right, so can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So again, I'm gonna repeat myself because I did work for the city building department for 17 years. And I am not here to defend staff, but I think the energies and the frustrations I understand, but having been employed, I also have to say that you need to take this energy and frustration to city council because city staff can only do so much. And I know that they are trying and there's not enough staff. And I know that you don't want to hear that, but that's reality. So I think maybe some committee members need to make a short presentation to city council to just voice your frustration and let them know exactly what you've communicated now. So that's one comment. The other is that when I was leaving, as I was retiring from the city, I did speak to Brian DeMoore, and I'm really passionate about what I did at the city. I felt a responsibility, and so I offered to train city staff on accessibility inspections. That offer is still open. I'm happy to meet with Sarah Clark's team or Jessica's staff to do basic training, because some of it is it's nuance and you know, with some guidance, others can check to make sure that things are compliant. It's not as difficult as one would think with some guidance. So that offer is still there. I would love to help because it just makes everything more inclusive. It allows little tweaks to be made that really make a big difference to those that need this assistance. And it's really our responsibility as citizens of Santa Barbara to assist in that process. Thank you.
Sorgman, I want to thank you for your comments there, and for one, apologize if any of my comments felt pointed at any staff member in particular. Our frustration is with the process, not with individuals. The turnover has been insane, and I'm being emphatic to make sure that the staff coming on to this role understands the frustration level, and I can't express it adequately enough, and understands the history of what feels like obstructionism to this committee, and if I outed any one staff member directly, I apologize for that. And just one more quick question on this subject before we move on, and this is for Mr. Henschke, if he's still on the line. I'd like to know from the city attorney's office point of view if there's any issue that he could see with regard to this committee passing a resolution.
There's no issue with the committee passing a resolution.
Thank you.
I want to thank Ms. Sorgman for that. I want to make sure everybody understands she is a certified access specialist, okay? And she's offered to do this for free, and somehow she was never taken up on the thing. She could have helped the staff a year ago or half a year ago to understand what is an accessible table, what is an accessible ramp, and yet somehow that wasn't done. I just have a few more comments here. Last June or so, I asked Downtown Parking to please send me a monthly spreadsheet showing all the inspections, the violations, the dates of the violations, what the fines were. I got that report one time. It was supposed to be a monthly report. I got one monthly report That was the end of it. I was then told by Brian Bossy, who was kind of hired to run the downtown parking while it was in transition, that I should not talk to him or to Sarah, that I only could talk to Brian DeMoore. So from that point on, from last summer, I haven't been able to discuss anything with downtown parking. We have an ad hoc committee that's supposed to work on downtown parking, and we get no feedback. So that's got to change. And I'm hoping that somehow, whether it's Jessica or whoever, can include us in this. And I would like to ask that Jessica and Sarah and Ashley meet with me and other members and walk a little bit of State Street and just see all the violations that are there, that have been there for a year and a half or more, that no one has done. I've watched Victor make checklists with all this stuff, and then nothing happens. So can Sarah and Jessica and Ashley find a time next week or so that we can just go out there and see this and see from eyes of people who know the accessibility laws? Can we do that?
Jim, I would like to join that, and maybe Elizabeth would, I would love to work with Elizabeth in the group so we could identify things and maybe list them out and then present it to the city council.
That would be good, but I would like to have Ms. Clark and Jessica and Ashley there too, so they can see with their own eyes what we're talking about. Is that possible that we can schedule a walk?
Chair Marston, I'll get together with Jessica and Sarah and look at our schedules over the next probably 2 weeks and see if we can find a few times that would work. And I'll reach out to you with those dates, and we'll get something scheduled.
Thank you very much. Our hope is that we won't have to write this resolution, because if we can solve it in the next 3 months, I think we'll all be content. Not happy, but at least content. So if you can just do that, Ashley, that would be great.
Will do.
One more thought here. Okay, I think I've covered all of that. Are there any other public comments or any comments at all about this important topic?
No, Mr. Chairman, there's no other public comment.
Okay.
Oh, Barbara Silva has raised her hand.
Okay.
Ms. Silver?
I would like some mention to be made about the funding that's available for either CASPs or access experts to assist us. That was something that turned up to our surprise, that part of the business license fees come back to us specifically for access support.
That's a great comment, and I wonder, because at one time we were told it's $150,000 is sitting in a fund to hire access people. We have access specialists that we have a contract with, and yet no one sent them out to do the violations. So it's one thing to say our employees don't have time, but you have a contract to pay CASP people. They could go out there and hand out the violations, and yet nothing's been done there. So Sarah, can you tell us why we haven't taken advantage of the CAS besides their training to your group?
Chair Marston, I'm going to defer to Ashley. I believe her shop is the one who has the contract with the CASP, so I don't want to speak to the amount of funds or what's available in there. We have taken advantage of that for, like I said, staff training. We've also had them review our guidelines and review any other proposed changes in the interim, but I will let her speak to specifically what is available there.
Okay, but my question is not the money, but why they haven't been used to actually go visit these places.
Chair Marston, being as I'm new in this ADA coordinator role, I would like to follow up on that, and I can get back to you on the exact scope of that contract and whether time was included for them to perform those types of inspections.
Okay.
And then I will also follow up on the funding availability and see if there's another avenue for using that funding to get some additional support.
Thank you, Ms. Hsu. Uh,
I appreciate that that a number of people are new to these problems and this committee and its concerns. And another related frustration is we only meet quarterly. So you can imagine between meeting quarterly and the turnover, it's really hard to get any traction on anything. And we've maybe this is an opportunity, given the circumstances, that we should schedule an interim meeting. That was what we came to in discussions about scheduling with Mr. Diamore, is that we can certainly call special meetings in between the quarterly meetings, and perhaps because of the turnover, one is warranted here.
Thanks, Nick. I see that Ms. Sorgman has her hand raised. Can we call on her again, please?
Her hand is down, but I'm not sure if she's.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I thought I had my hand right. Okay. So I just want to comment on the funds that you're speaking about. The funds are actually on the public department side, not on the public work side. So I don't know that they would be able to be shared, because it's supposed to be for training for building department staff. They go to seminars, there's training for the inspectors and whatnot. So I think it's in a different department that those funds are transferred to. But I am a member of the CASI board, which is the California Access Specialist Institute. And there is current legislation, and I forget what's AB, I forget what the number is, but happy to share it afterwards. That currently it's going to be extended. It looks like that's going to be extended for another couple of years, but there are monies available to business owners to perform ADA work of some sort. So there are funds, and perhaps our business community is not aware that there's monies there. I don't think that there's hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I'm sure that there's $4,000 to $5,000 if someone wants to use that to renovate their space to make it more compliant. And I don't know if they could be used for some of the outdoor dining spaces. So, but someone should do some research on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And because of that comment, I want to state that there's two problems that weren't brought up. One is that some of these parklets have a raised bar for putting your drink on. That's not legal at all, and none of them have been moved. So you're allowing people to go in with a wheelchair and not be able to even use these raised counters. And I do think to Elizabeth's comment, when Brian told us about hiring the cast, he said it was going to be for sidewalk dining problems. So I'll have Ashley look into that. If there's no more comments.
Point of clarification, Mr.
Yeah.
Marston.
Yes.
You said none of these raised bars are acceptable. I believe what you meant to say was that 20% of them must be accessible.
Yes. By accessible, I didn't mean the whole thing had to be lowered, but you cannot have all high bars with stools. And many of these places have stools and a high bar and no place for anyone in a wheelchair to meet with their friends.
And here's something else that I think it's important for staff to understand. Is it's not just 20% of all dining spaces, because there's an important distinction that needs to be made between indoor dining and outdoor dining. Those are unique experiences. And in the outdoor dining setting, there's sidewalk and there's parklet, and those are both unique settings. So 20% of each needs to be accessible. And when looking at just a parklet itself, if there is a disparity between tabletop and bar top seating, that is 20% of each needs to be accessible. Some of these parklets have perimeter bars, and the disabled are excluded from the experience of sitting and dining facing out, enjoying the crowd, and forced to sit at a table facing in. It's a very different experience, and 20% of each experience needs to be accessible.
Thanks, Nick. Are you sure it's 20 and not 5?
Well, 1 in 5 is my understanding. I thought,
Okay. All right.
Are 1 in 20, not 20%. That's right.
Okay, it's 5% of
Sorry.
all. Yeah,
Yes, correct. Mr.
which is-
Relling just shared in chat. I'm sorry, I was following up on an earlier comment that mistakenly said 20%. And
okay.
as it came from staff, I took it as the gospel.
Okay, it's 5%, but this is not being enforced at all. So let's move on if we can. Are there any other comments before we move on? Okay, the next item is subcommittee reports. And as I mentioned to Jessica, we have an ad hoc committee for different groups. And by the way, to all you members, if you want to form a new ad hoc committee to do anything, just let me know. I can appoint 3 people to it. We can't go over the quorum, but if you want to form a new ad hoc, please let me know. So the first one here is the Sidewalk Ad Hoc Committee. That's Marston, Burnham, and Kuntz. I've already mentioned how we got the new domes at the MTD in the parking lot. And here's a quick list from Jim Dewey on what we've done in our Sidewalk Committee. We've installed or made compliant 107 curb ramps. We added 7 new blue curb parking zones and refreshed, painted 9 locations. We installed 6 new accessible parking signs. We located 4 accessible parking signs, repaired or replaced 4 current accessible parking signs. Nick has done a lot of work showing some of these parkways between the sidewalk and the curb were inaccessible. When you dropped off a van, it might be muddy, it might be dirt, it might be a big hole, there might be a sign in the way or a mailbox. So he's fixed some of these last year, and this year he said we've filled 1 parkway with flex pave to extend accessible landing zones and have 7 more locations planned to infill. The next group, any comments there before I go on?
Yeah, well, just one comment. I'd like to have more details on these locations that have been resolved recently and the ones that are planned to be resolved.
Okay, would you mind just talking to Jim on that, or do you want me to do it?
It'd be, I think if you could just reply to his email.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. Yes. Okay, the next one is blue curb parking, and that's Kuntz and Suzanne Tejada. And on this one, we could use 1 more person from the committee to try to get more blue curb parking. So if anyone's interested, please let me know. And after Nick, okay, go ahead. Nick, do you have any comments here on blue curb parking?
You know, Brian had been looking at the possibility of some of these 0-100 block red curbs that have been repainted. But unfortunately, here we are. I think it's almost a year later, and we haven't made any progress there. But for the benefit of new committee members and new staff members, just for your edification, I joined, and actually, you know, this kind of speaks to public comment from Ms. Capone as well. I joined this committee, I don't know, 5 or 7 years ago, because I was concerned about the seemingly shrinking inventory of blue curb parking in the downtown area. And we heard from the downtown parking group. At the time it was Mr. Garza, Mr. Dayton, who assured us, oh no, it's growing. And I asked, well, can I see that data? And took some time, but eventually I got some data, and to my pleasure, there was global information, geolocation information in that. And I managed to kind of put together a little bit of a mashup with spreadsheet and Google Street View, and I was able to virtually audit all of these spaces, and I found a number of discrepancies, and I reported on that, And so here we are, 5 or 7 years later, and to my knowledge, with few exceptions, not much has changed. We got a couple of fixes, mostly from Jim Dewey and his group, where there was signage issues, or we got 1 or 2 blue curbs relocated, but we have this larger initiative to increase the density of blue curb parking in the downtown plaza area. And I had initially been advocating for a number of new locations in the 100 blocks of the cross streets off of State Street, and every other block going up, so that everything in the whole downtown area was no more than 2 blocks from 2 block faces from a on-street ADA parking space. And of course, Mr. Garza and Mr. Dayton weren't interested in pursuing that. Mr. Diamore showed some interest and seemed to be pursuing it, but never really got anywhere with it. And now I'm afraid it's completely dead with his absence. And the other thing that really concerns me in the city was brought to our attention again today by Ms. Capone's public comment, and that is the abuse of ADA parking by the valet vendors. There's only 2 of them, and they are chronic abusers of the ADA spaces in both public and private parking situations. And we've asked repeatedly that the Santa Barbara Police Department get involved, and we're promised a presentation, and then they reschedule, and it never happens. We eventually get a report on their activities and enforcing, but one time I tried to get Santa Barbara City Police to come out and enforce my civil rights on Blue Star valet occupying ADA parking in a private parking lot unlawfully, and the traffic officer actually threatened to cite me for obstructing the public right of way, and refused to enforce my civil rights and issue a citation. So this is a huge problem, and something needs to be done. And I've asked staff many times, where can we go with this? And it just goes round and round. Maybe the city attorney's office has some new ideas. I'd love to hear those. Yeah, so a lot to say, no progress to report on this subject.
Okay, Mr. Henshy, do you have any comments on how we can stop this abuse of valet parking taking over the blue curbs, and also how we can get some more action here?
Honorable Chair Marston, Member Coons, I don't have any quick solutions right off the top of my head. I believe that you're accurately stating that they are violating the law by using the handicap parking spaces for their valet parking operations. Those are spaces that have to be set aside. One of the ways that we could, as the city, could directly control the issue is with the valet parking permit program that we had talked about a couple of years ago, and has not gone anywhere for a variety of reasons, I guess. But we can certainly take a look into it and report back to you on anything specific that we can do. The suggestion previously about using enforcement techniques to inform the valet operators that they are in fact violating the law, and that the valet operators are required to accommodate a person with a disability when that person comes up, and handle them in a different manner, an equally accessible manner. That is something that we can do. And of course, as both of you know, the Title III violations and the California Civil Code provisions relating to business operations and public facility operations, by which I mean business operations, are enforceable by private legal action. So the city's enforcement would have to relate to the persuasion, and then if they're taking over a parking space, enforcing that in some manner, and I would have to investigate that further. But that's the best I can do for you right now.
Okay, wait, on that subject, while I still got you here, Ms. Capone brought up an issue. I believe she said that it was in the public, on the city street on Cabrillo Boulevard. And that's certainly something that the city can enforce. It's a little trickier when it's on private parking lots. I understand that. I can appreciate that. But right there on Cabrillo Boulevard, certainly there's got to be something the city attorney's office can do for us there.
I hear you, and we'll take a look at that. I understand the use of the public street as a valet stopping area is something that's common in a lot of cities, and certainly we can look at how we can enforce that. As I indicated, we did want to establish a valet parking ordinance that would create a regulatory environment for us. Perhaps we need to dust that off again and run it back through this committee for your input again.
That'd be fine by me. We've always been open to discussing that ordinance. In fact, I believe most of us were in favor of that ordinance. I think that Mr. Dayton couldn't get a quid pro quo out of us, so he abandoned it. In any event, Mr. Henschke, would your office be willing to write a letter to the operators of the Fleur de Maze on Cabrillo Boulevard and inform them that you are aware of a practice that is not up to your standards, and a warning that further legal action could be coming?
Honorable Chair, Committee Member Koontz, I can't commit to any particular enforcement action or option. What I can commit to is I will address the issue in an appropriate manner, and we will do it as quickly as our time allows. And so I'll undertake that investigation. And
you should be a politician. You should be a politician.
No, I shouldn't.
Dan?
I'm good being a lawyer.
Dan, I think Nick was asking just if you could write them a letter. I don't think anything with enforcement, but sometimes a letter has a lot of power too.
I appreciate the input, and I will take under submission your request and take appropriate action. But I hear you loud and clear, and thank you for bringing the issue to our attention, and we'll investigate and take appropriate action.
This is Jim. Mr. Henschke, thank you for your input. Can you actually write to or talk to the police chief and find out what they do at anything about these violations? Is it something they can handle or not? So just let us know if the police can do something.
Chair Marston, thank you for that input. Yes, discussions with the police department would be a normal part of my ordinary investigation.
Okay.
And I will provide, what I'll do is I'll let Ashley Shue know what we've done. And this is going to be a staff effort that includes her team as well as this office. So we'll let you know, and I'll provide a written communication to you and the members of the committee.
Okay, thank you. I have one comment about what Nick said about what Brian Demore was working with on these 0 blocks, where once State Street was closed, then you didn't have to have the right turn lanes with the red curb. So off the cuff, Rob and Victor decided to put up signs that said these are loading zones for trucks. And they took over a lot of those spaces for loading zones. So I talked to Cliff Bauer, the Director of Public Works, last week, because it's been a long problem here that the Acela program, which is a huge computer program software, is not accessible to the public for public works. Everything in the building department is accessible through Acela. Anyone can go on Acela and find out building permit information or whatever. For some reason, Public Works has blocked it for anyone outside of Public Works. So I talked to him about that, and that's an ongoing discussion. He said that it was accessible, but of course it's not. So I don't know where that came from. But during that talk, I mentioned the whole blue curb problem. And he said that there's conversations being done, but we have to worry about equity, and we have to have council action. And as I just said, last year when they decided to put all these loading zones, there was no equity. No one talked about, well, what about the accessible spaces? No one talked about public spaces. It was done by an action from downtown parking, period. Now we're being told, oh, we have to worry about equity and council action. So I hope Ashley can figure out what's going on, why we can't just get some of those spaces for accessible parking. So Ashley, if you get back to me on that, I would appreciate it.
Sure, I will follow up and try and get some background and history and provide an update.
Okay, and I don't want to put too much on your plate, but can you find out why the public is not allowed to look at any Public Works document? As I said, Cliff said, oh, they're all accessible, but they're not. So my fear is that they're looking at it from inside Public Works, and of course your computers are accessible to it, but the public isn't.
Well, and
Chair Marston, if I may, I know that there is some private and confidential information included in that system, and
Right.
but I also know that Adam Hendel is working on working with IT to figure out a way to make certain information public that can be public, and so that is in the
Right.
works, and I
Yes.
can report back
Okay. Yeah,
as we make some progress on that.
I've talked to Adam about that. I just want to make sure that you understood that it's not accessible. Because if you're sitting there in Public Works, you don't think there's any problem. So you don't know that the public can't access it.
and if the public knows to talk to Adam Hendel, they could get added as an interested party, and then they can access it. But
Right. But where's that information going to be? The
Right.
public should know how to get it. So we'll get that worked out. Okay, the next one is.
Wait, one more.
Yeah.
We heard in public comment about in one of the staff reports about the public parking lots in the new kiosks, automated kiosks for the public parking lots. And I just wanted to comment here as it relates to accessible parking that I personally, and I know there's others who are similarly limited in accessibility, I avoid the downtown parking lots. I can't reach out my window to grab a ticket from the booth. And when the booths were manned, it wasn't so bad. I could honk, get the attention of the attendant if they were in the booth, and then they would come pull the ticket. But man, I always lived in fear that I would get in the line and then realize there was nobody in the booth, and now what? I can't even back out. There's a line of cars behind me. It's just it's always been an accessibility issue for me, and now it's worse with the automated kiosks. And I can appreciate public frustration with the fact that the extended free parking time for the disabled is not being honored right now during this transition. I say in air quotes. Hopefully there will be a solution to that coming, but in the interim, we're being deprived of our reduced fee schedule per city ordinance when there's no one attending those public lots. I did notice recently at one of the city kiosks what appeared to be an RFID reader. And my presumption is that that is used for city staff to waive their probably ID badge and get out of jail or parking free. Can staff confirm that suspicion?
Chair Marston and Committee Member Kuntz, I would have to follow up with our downtown parking staff on that and get back to you.
Okay. I also understand from Key News reports that license plate readers are being implemented. And can you find out if those readers are capable of recognizing the ADA logo on a plate or hanging from a placard in a windshield?
Well, I just watched that video and they only do the plate. They don't do the placards. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
that's what they're looking for now, but perhaps the software and cameras are capable of.
I wanted to say,
Go ahead, Karen.
It's Nick, it's not just you, it would be someone with a stroke in left arm. It would be someone with an amputation. It would be someone with shoulder surgery who can't lift their arm or elbow to reach out. I mean, I half the time I have to open my door and crawl out of my car to reach them. So the whole issue of there's not just a few people they aren't accessible for, but they're not accessible for a lot of people because of how they're located.
Yeah, and just to further new staff members and new committee members' understanding of this situation, this committee brought concerns to downtown parking when this was just a discussion years ago, and our concerns were poo-pooed by Mr. Garza and Mr. Dayton. Oh no, don't worry, it'll all be accessible. Well, here we are. It's not accessible, and it's putting the city of Santa Barbara in an at-risk position.
Thank you, Nick. I want to add one comment about this, and this is for our attorney, Mr. Henschke. The city has a fee schedule, which shows that people with a placard gets an extra 75 minutes. This change at the Granite Garage voids that. That's illegal. You cannot just change the fee schedule without having it done by the city council. So right now, there's no discount for people with a placard, even though the fee schedule says there is. So this is a violation that needs to be looked at as soon as Mr. Henschke can. Okay, the next is the report from the annual report and access advisory committee resolution ad hoc committee. That's Kuntz, Burnham, and so it needs another member if someone's interested, but I don't think there's anything there. Does anyone have anything about the annual report?
Jim, this is Bob. The resolution's been passed. It's in place now. Thank you for all the hard work everyone did on that. No, I've not heard any update on an annual report. I guess we can talk to Ashley and talk about what to be expected in this year's.
Okay, that was my thought. Ashley's brand new to this, so we'll put off the annual report discussion for later.
Yeah.
The next.
Wait 1 moment before we move on. I think that it might be appropriate to discuss at this time adjusting this committee because the resolution is not going to be an ongoing discussion, or at least that resolution wasn't.
Correct, correct.
And now we have a new resolution being discussed, I suppose, but yeah, never mind. Go
Well,
ahead.
that resolution we passed today is not the same as this, the committee's resolution.
Right.
Okay, so we should change the name of this just to annual report.
So do we need to put that to a vote, or Sarita, is that something you could just change this to the annual report ad hoc committee?
I can just change the name to annual report ad hoc committee.
Yes,
Okay.
because the resolution's been passed. That's done. So yeah,
Okay.
annual. I recommend annual report subcommittee.
Okay.
Okay.
And Ashley, that's just to help you with the annual report. We don't write it. We just kind of can work with you on that in the future.
Sure.
Okay, then
Chair Marston, do you happen to remember when the last annual report took place? Otherwise, I can look it up. But
I think it was the summertime of last year. Is that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll
Okay.
probably be
Thank
coming
you.
up on that here.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
And the last, second to the last, is the website application replacement project ad hoc committee. And that was Mr. Burnham, Mr. Kuntz, and myself. So
Jim,
there's not much.
Jim, this is Bob real quick. I need to leave. I have another appointment, but I just want to let you know, Scott has sent out a survey regarding a particular calendar item to see how accessible it was. I'm still working on that. So that's my only update as far as that goes.
Okay, can you hold on for one more minute? Because I have just a thought from Scott has said that we should be able to do some testing on the new website in May.
Good.
So it's been a long time, but they're working on it, and he thinks it'll be out in May, and then we're going to be busy with that.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I have one comment on this subject. I'd like to discuss that the possibility that I step down from that ad hoc committee and ask Skylar if he's interested in taking my place.
You read my mind, Nick. I thought that would be a good thing.
Just for everyone else's edification, I have some background in web application development, and I thought that might be useful on this committee. But as it turns out, the vast majority of the accessibility issues that we've encountered are usability issues for the visually impaired. And Scott and the IT team really have a better handle on the web application nuance than I could have ever imagined that the city would have. They've been doing great there. I don't feel like I have much to contribute other than a voice of advocacy, but I don't have the visually impaired experience, and that's where the majority of accessibility issues with the website occur.
Thank you, Nick.
So,
That was
Jim, would you like me to ask Skylar? Or do
well,
you
you
wanna
could, yeah. Go ahead and ask him, and I'll talk to him too. But he's off the talk by now, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we'll remove. Well, we'll wait until we get the comment from Skylar. But I think Nick has a good idea.
Does that need a vote? Does that need to even?
No, that's run through the chair, so that should be okay.
Great.
Okay. I think we have another public comment from Ms. Sorgman again.
Mr. Chair, we actually have two public comments. Should we
Okay.
go to the last item under subcommittee reports and then attack those?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's finish the subcommittee reports and then hear public comment on them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my suggestion to Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, the last one is Outdoor Dining and Parkland Ad Hoc Committee. That's Suzanne Tejeda, and me. We need a new member for that one. So if anyone's interested in joining that group, please let me know. I think we probably covered everything on there except that we're not getting any traction after almost 2 years. There's still many places that don't have accessible ramps, accessible tables, path of travel, lowered counters. We need to have people out there in the street. I'm tired of education, and I need enforcement and I need someone to say, you can't use public property to violate the ADA and have permission to still keep using the public property. And I think we've covered everything else. Does anyone have?
Jim,
I'd like to suggest that Ms. Luckett join your ad hoc committee.
yes, I was going to say I will be happy to do that. And also, I don't know if this is the time, but I would like to be on a committee or put on the agenda next that we work on inviting someone from the police department. I'll be part of the committee or person involved with doing my best to get someone to be a guest speaker at our next committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. Write me your thoughts afterwards. As I've said before, we've tried for 4 years to get someone from the police to come and they won't do it. So that's always been hard to handle. Now we have a few public comments.
Yes, we have Elizabeth Sorgman in Accessible Santa Barbara. We'll start with Elizabeth Sorgman.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to comment regarding the Excella program. I know that Public Works and Planning and Building kind of all have it a little bit differently. I mean, set up differently, but there are lots of applications, all of the DARTs and PRTs and whatnot seem to be available on the planning department side with a lot of information as the building department. So you can, members of the public can look up permits and get information. They can make public records requests to look at plans that have been submitted. So I'm not really sure why Public Works isn't able to provide the same kind of ability to see information that's made available on the planning and on the building department side. So I don't know if it's a tweak that can be made that's actually easy, but relative to what's I guess required legally, I think you have to be able to provide documents when someone makes a public records request. Thank you.
I'm going to throw in real quick, Cliff was from San Diego, and San Diego County has their public works stuff completely available to the public. So does San Francisco. So I wonder why we're so secretive here. And anyway, we'll get that worked out. Ashley says she'll look into it. Thank you for a comment. Okay, and one more public comment?
Yes, Accessible Santa Barbara. If you'd like to speak, please unmute.
Hi, this is Will Railing again, Accessible Santa Barbara. I listened with interest with the discussion you had as part of this item with City Attorney Dan Henschke about the property with the valet parking on lower in the funk zone. We've researched this property extensively, so I'd like to provide a little clarification on the discussion. So this is a parking lot that's on Anacapa Street. It's actually all one property. It's an Anacapa Street property. Now they're providing, they've sort of bifurcated their parking lot and provide one piece of it for the use of 29 East Cabrillo and the restaurant that Ms. Capone mentioned earlier. But it's actually on the 11 Anacapa Street property. So that property has gone through major renovations with building permits. And as part of that renovation, they are created a situation of valet parking only, mandatory valet parking for both on the smaller piece, which serves the Cabrillo Street restaurant, and on the larger piece, which serves the restaurants on the other side, part of the 11 Anacapa Street complex. Now, when you set up a valet parking operation, there is California Building Code accessibility requirements for the accessible loading and unloading zone. And they're very specific. We're familiar with them from the discussion on valet parking a few years ago. And in neither of these, in neither half of the parking lot has the property owner provided that required accessible loading zone. It's California Building Code Chapter 11B-503, where the requirements are found. So in my opinion, this is a simple building code violation, and we're happy to report it as such. And I believe that the building department enforcement mechanisms can address this, and this property owner will be required to provide a proper accessible loading zone in each of the 2 valet operations that are in operation at this address, 11 Anacapa Street. Now, when you have required valet parking, you have to allow people with placards to self-park. That is also a building code requirement. And the reason is some people have specially equipped vans, which they would never dream of letting some kid working for a valet parking service drive their car. So that clearly is something they also violated here in Ms. Caponi's case. So they may be spilling out with their backup into the public right of way. And that's an issue akin to the, the Chick-fil-A problem on Upper State. And perhaps that is something Mr. Henchy would want to get involved in if it were documented. But, this valet operator is one of the 2 largest main ones in the city. It's called Blue Star Parking. And everywhere they operate in the city, they are defiantly anti-accessibility, let's say. Many people have, asked them why they're storing regular cars in the ADA space, and they basically get told to take a hike. So I don't think the answer is to legalize valet parking citywide. So I do think this is a significant violation, and we'll take it up with the building department. The best email address for Accessible Santa Barbara, by the way, is Will, W-I-L-L, @accessiblesb.org. And I encourage any of you to contact us that way, and including Ms. Caponi. And we'll get right on that. And I will also follow up with Mr. Henchy myself on this issue. So, and just lastly, just to clarify, I noticed what was going on with the parking charges, and Mr. Kuntz raises a significant accessibility concern. Not really an accessibility concern, but the fee resolution, as Chair Marston mentioned, provides for the free period is 75 minutes for everyone and double that for placards. So they're giving this the regular free period to everybody. So the violation of the fee resolution is not providing the extra free period for people with placards. Thank you. Have a great month. Bye.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for hanging in there so long, but I think we covered a lot of ground. I'm very happy. If there's no more comments, I will adjourn, but I'll wait.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, I believe Mr. Henschke had his hand up.
Okay.
No?
Chair Marston, I did, but I lowered my hand. I will discuss with Mr. Railing directly. But no, I don't have my hand up anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So just a comment to Mr. Railing's comment. He can add to that growing list of locations where Blue Star operates in defiance of federal ADA parking requirements and California Building Code parking requirements. The Hilton Express on Haley, and the Hotel Indigo on Lower State Street.
Yes, those are both in violation.
Daily.
Any other?
Daily.
Yes. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I see that Ms. Caponi has her hand raised.
Oh, okay, good. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. I just want to confirm that Mr. Railing's description of the parking situation on Cabrillo is correct. It is the parking lot behind the restaurant where I was denied the use of the blue parking space. And I also just want to say I object to the chat function being disabled at 11:40 a.m. so that we could no longer communicate, because since we're not in the David Gebhardt room, there's no other opportunity for other advocates to communicate. And so someone disabled the chat. So I just want to object to that. And that's all I have. And thank you all again for your amazing work. That's it.
Chair Marston, may I address what Ms. Caponi just said?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, the chat function is actually should not be used as a method for communication during public meetings. It is basically out of meeting communications that are inappropriate. And so the chat function was disabled in my direction because we have Brown Act concerns with the use of a chat function during a public meeting. The proper way to communicate during a public meeting is to be recognized by the chair through the raising of hands, have the chair call on the person, and then the person can talk, which is what has been happening. And so the chat function creates a significant issue with California's open meeting laws. And so it was disabled, and it should not be used as a method of communication during the meeting. Regarding the valet parking situation, I want to reiterate something that I said before that's extremely important. It is an apparent Title III ADA violation that is enforceable both under ADA and California Civil Code, probably more effectively by private legal action. And so Ms. Caponi would appear to have a legitimate private complaint that can be enforceable, including the recovery of attorney's fees on her behalf. The city does not have direct capabilities of enforcing Title III. We don't have standing, but she does. What I committed to do was to investigate enforcement of things that we could do, like making sure that the disabled parking space is not taken over by the valet parkers, and that, as Mr. Railing said, the ability to self-park using available disabled spaces that are required is maintained by the valet parker. And so just want to clarify what we can, as the city, can do and can't do. Anyway, but thank you for the opportunity, Chair Marston, to address that.
I just have
Dan,
go ahead.
I have a question. Dan, is it because this blue, what is it called? The parking company?
Blue Star.
Blue Star, don't they have to have a city business permit to operate?
Chair Marston, if I may answer the question.
Yes.
They do have to have a city building business license, but the business license is purely a taxing license. It's not a regulatory license, and so that's not a vehicle for code enforcement. But that's why I said I'd take a look at it and take appropriate action, as I promised the committee that I would do.
Okay, let me say this. I don't think that we're asking you to do enforcement of these valet stuff as much as please send them a letter that says you must do these things under the law, and you could be sued by someone else. But we don't expect you to actually take them to court. But I think they need to know that. I think one of the problems is you have a lot of young people working there as the valet guy, and they don't know what the rules are. And they just say, well, my boss says I can't do that. But if you could just point out to the two valet people that you have to have self-park, you have to allow people to do what Ms. Caponi was asking for, and just a nice firm letter would be good. And the other question I have was on the chat function. I think I understood that people in the audience, like Ms. Caponi and Mr. Railing, should be able to chat. That it's not a Brown Act if people in the audience chat. Is that correct? I know what you're saying about the members shouldn't be chatting with each other, but is there a reason why the audience can't chat with each other?
The difficulty is it becomes a communication that's outside of the public meeting that the members of the committee have access to. It's a bad practice to use the chat function during meetings, and I requested that it be disabled so that we did not get the city or the committee in trouble with the Brown Act for using a communication technique that is not part of the meeting itself.
Okay, I guess I understand. I'm not happy, but I guess the people in the audience could just text each other if they have questions, but
there you go.
Okay.
On that point, I totally appreciate the position and the problems but related, I do also appreciate that this was kind of our first meeting where we had a more interactive process. We had previously only called for public comment at the beginning or at the end of the entire agenda. And now at the request of Mr. Railing and the advice of Chair Marston, we have a much more interactive process, and I found it very enjoyable.
Thank you, Nick. I also have an appointment, so I think after this
I have one very, very quick comment, if I could, and
Sure.
thought maybe it'd be good to, end the meeting on maybe a little bit of a happier note. On Thursday next week, March 3rd at 8:30 a.m., the city is having a ribbon cutting celebration for the multi-use path and creek restoration along Las Paseos. And I just wanted to share that I received a call from Cameron Benson with Creek Restoration and Water Management, who's well aware of Hillside and our residents' intellectual and developmental disabilities. And he was calling with an access question. I happen to know him from some other projects and things that we're trying to work on here. And he was wondering, had I seen it? Had I been on it? Had any of the residents? How accessible, is it truly in real life? It was completely done to ADA standards in terms of slope and compact soils, et cetera. So while I and my program director did go out and explore, and they've done a beautiful job, and I see people in strollers and in wheelchairs on the main road, but it was going off, into the Arroyo Burro, watershed area where they have paths that actually, I guess you can go all the way to the Allen Creek entrance on the, on the side across from Hendry's Beach. And we haven't been able to take residents out there yet, whether in electric wheelchairs or push wheelchairs or those who are ambulatory, to really test it out. But that somebody at City was calling and asking, I thought was incredibly positive. It is a beautiful space. We did notice and report that there was some ruts, whether from the rain we had about 3 weeks ago, or maybe bicycles or mountain bikes or something that people riding in the back there. Brought that to his attention, and they're going to take care of that and look at it, because that's the only thing we saw that could impede somebody on a wheelchair. And we don't know in terms of non-electric, but people having to either roll their own or have somebody with them, where some of the incline might be a little too much. But it's just nice to be working with a department that recognizes, appreciates, and is proactively asking for feedback in terms of the area of accessibility. And I haven't heard anything like that in the couple of years I've been on this committee, and just wanted to share that positive interaction that we had, and encourage anybody on the committee or listening, if you haven't, please check it out. And if you have input or thoughts, I'm sure the city would like to hear them. And also, if you're available at 8:30 on next week on the 3rd, come on out and take a look for yourself, and help them celebrate having put a really beautiful addition along, from Modoc all the way through Las Paseos down to, to the beach pretty much. But that was it. Just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
Thank you, Michael. I wouldn't be able to make that meeting, but if you're interested in how the accessibility is, perhaps I can get Ms. Sorgman and some of the blind members, Bob and Skylar and myself. If we could somehow get there, I think I would volunteer them to walk with you and see what we think about the accessibility. So if you want to try to put something together at a later date, just to look at the accessibility, I think we could get some people that might help you understand better.
Absolutely. That would be great. And I'd look forward to doing that.
All right, let's be in touch.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I have to go to a meeting. So thank you, everybody, for a very good meeting. And Ashley, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
and the whole group from downtown parking and from Public Works that gave the reports. I'm not sure if they're all on, but thank you all for a very good meeting. I appreciate it. And I'll call for an adjournment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks, Sarita.
You're welcome. Thanks.